れと一緒にこれも入る。ね、それと本当にこういうけど、体でパッとこれいくから、で今度こう縮めてこれが入る。そこでこれが入る。3つ入る。ワン、ツー、スリー。どういうふうにパンチ。それに玉りもうまくなってた。3つになってくる。こうやってパーンこれでこう体でこうなる。これ3つになる。3つだけどね、1、2、体です。1、2、これ当たって足でこうやってなんですか？こうやって見えないで、じゃなくて相手が倒れない。
These strikes are hidden to your opponent, that's why they're so effective. If the opponent sees them, then obviously it's going to be ineffective, isn't it?
Patch, okay. Bam! Bam! Okay? ね、こうやって、ね、と3つ流れてるのやらないね。
When the three are flow to you, and the three strikes are flow together, you don't see that.
これの足でな。それをはい、さあ、いくつ？
So as the attacker punches, he's shown the demonstration there of Ichimonji, but not being a linear, has to be at this angle on a block. So he's coming around to the openings that the person's creating by punching. And that brings him closer to. The shito isn't an extension of the arm, like it's shown in the basics. The shito is kept closer to the body, and he uses his body to slam, and that would knock you down. It could break your collarbone, but it would knock you down. Whereas a strike, a karate or a kempo type strike is designed to break the collarbone, not have that kind of power. Now, as you're coming close to the body with that kind of a strike, you've got the elbow next, bah, just as a natural. So that's what he's saying, that the elbow just follows. So it's one, but it's one part of two, part of three. There is no 1, 2, 3. So another instance, you could be punching the same way, and you could step in and block to the outside, blocking here, and the elbow, as you're passing the person's rib cage, the elbow would just come back like that. Whereas in karate, your elbow is like this. It's a long Junzuki type thrust, which is okay in form but doesn't work in a practical situation. Now the way Hatsumi does it, he explained then, you've just took the liver off a person and you'd collapse like a ton of bricks. You don't have to break ribs. It's understanding what to do with organs as well. How to wind a person, how to thrust this power through. So you've got to be able to move, and inside of your walk, which is not the way pedestrian walk, left brain were trained and then learn technique. Right brain is much more amorphous, much more on the moment. It's inside the moment. That's why you can be a bigger now. Because inside of that moment, the limbic brain is inputting information quite quickly, and if you're responding to that rather than what you think you're looking at binocularly and making a decision with the cognate front brain, then that's not the place to be. You've got to be in this gaze, this oneness, this motion, this emptiness. But it isn't empty. It's full of information. You're just not paying attention to any of it. Your body is responding to seeing spaces, and the body responds to looking for spaces. Horses will always find a space. You try to corner a rat, it'll always find a space. So his ninjutsu was like chasing a mouse. You'll always find the space. And if you trust in your body, then your body parts, when they come to those spaces, can explode into movement inside of what you would call a step. Now if you've got a curious step and your step's coming out, you meet his foot. You can then control his spine through putting pressures of vectors through his foot. That brings his body into a place that might raise his arm. You're already moving into that space because you already were aware that that was going to open up. It wasn't there a second ago, and that's the flow of the fight. That's the nagari, working in the space, which is how he describes it. It's got to be in your walk. You're using your spine. You're not using any strength here. 1 ounce of pressure is too much, and those are the sort of things learning to float in your walk. So float in the walk has to come from a pulse return. So if we look at this model of tensegrity, which is designed and strung up to be the pelvis and a walking gait, and showing how the tension across the pelvis, up and down the legs, is maintained constantly through the whole globality of that model. Now, when you understand pulse return, what you've got is when the foot is reaching the floor, we think that the force ground reaction is equal and opposite, and that's Newton's law. What you've got with the tensegral body is when your foot hits the floor, which is called the interface, all of the muscles in the body co-contract to actually give you a pulse return back to the centre of axis of the body to give it stability. So that in actual fact you're lifting the foot off the floor, you're not stepping through it. And that's how a 10-ton dinosaur could move with what we call 4-bar mechanism walking, by putting the foot down and lifting it back up and not leaving a footprint of heel to toe to show that it had a vector of pressure. Now if you watch Hatsumi, he walks in a unique way. It's short, it's choppy. Sometimes it could be 3 steps or 1 long step. He changes direction a lot. That's his dance. And inside of that dance is this pulse return of movement that allows any part of the body. So if you were laid on your back in one of the instances where he's kicking my leg, it sort of mimicked being fallen down, or he'd gone to the floor, and then he brings the leg round to hit inside of the shin.
The reason why you have this kind of technique coming down is that because you'll get hit as well. So when you fall naturally, you have a chance. You understand?
Yeah.
This technique is when you get hit. Direction that you have to look at here. You're kicking probably 90 degrees to the angle of strike, yeah? And then using your spine as you're kicking through. Not just with the leg, but using your whole body as much as you can.
There's some acupuncture points there that if you touch will make a person fall down anyway. So if you hit them a little harder, you're going to get an even better response. If you hit them even harder, you'll break the shin quite easily. Now that could be done with a normal karate type kick, snap kick. But Hatsumi's kick is the end of the spine, and he described it like a monkey's tail is the end of our spine. So a monkey's tail is your big toe at the end of our spine. So he whips his leg round, being an extension of the spine, not a leg kicking from a hip. Now also then you put the side bend and rotation on the pelvic dynamics, and that makes that whip really powerful, rather like an alligator's tail. It would just break the legs off a buffalo. It's that kind of whip. It's not a kick. So it hasn't got the physics of a karate kick. And that's what he's meaning about coming from the spine, floating in your walk. And that's the mastery of his walk. That's the mastery. And the last time I saw him, last year, at his advanced age, still floating around, he calls that mutadori, the ability to dodge the sword, always to be in the right space, and stated quite clearly, without mutadori, you'll get old. Technique will not keep you forever.